He walked into my classroom like a goddamn punchline. The same man I swore I'd never see again, the one-night stand who left me restless, awake, and pissed at myself, was now standing in front of my easels with a sheepish grin, holding a folded enrollment slip. I almost dropped my coffee. Hi, he said, shifting awkwardly as if he could already sense the storm brewing in my head. His blonde hair looked Messier in daylight, his eyes just as startlingly blue, and the memory of his mouth on mine hit me like a sucker punch. For a split second, I considered walking out, leaving him to figure out perspective and charcoal smudges on his own. But not his was my class, my job, my sanctuary, and fate had the audacity to turn it into a circus. "Welcome," I managed, though my tone carried enough ice to freeze the whole damn studio. "Find a seat." He fumbled his way to an easel near the front, of course. And within 5 minutes, he managed to knock over a jar of paintbrushes, smear charcoal across his own cheek, and nearly topple the stool. My students laughed. I wanted to strangle him. His name was Aaron. I'd learned that much during our messy, whiskey-soaked night together. Back then, names had barely mattered. Bodies did. Touch did. But now, hearing Aaron echo in my classroom felt like a cruel joke from the universe. He caught me watching him. And damn it, he smiled. Like he knew exactly what strings he was pulling in me. By the end of the first hour, I was already exhausted. Teaching usually gave me energy, the kind of thrill that came from watching people discover art for the first time. But with Aaron in the room, I couldn't focus. Every clumsy movement of his body pulled me back to the heat of that night. The sound of him whispering my name against my neck. It was infuriating. "Loosen your grip," I said, walking over to correct the way his hand held the charcoal. "You're strangling the line. Let it breathe." I shouldn't have touched him, but I did. My fingers closed over his, guiding him with the kind of intimacy that made my pulse quicken. He tensed, then relaxed slowly, like his body remembered me too. "Like this?" he asked, his voice low, careful. I swallowed. "Yeah, better." When I stepped back, his lips were tilted in that same stupid grin that had gotten him laid the first time. Except now, carried something different, something softer. The class ended, and students packed up their things. Aaron lingered, fumbling with his sketchbook like he didn't know whether to stay or run. "You're really good at this," he said finally. "Teaching. You're patient. With everyone else." I crossed my arms. "You test my limits. Guess I have a talent for that." It was meant as a joke, but it landed heavier than it should have. I wanted to snap at him, remind him that whatever had happened between us was supposed to stay in the dark, in the blur of alcohol and bad decisions. But instead, I just stared at him, at the way his shoulders seemed to slump, like he was bracing himself for me to shove him away. And for reasons I didn't understand. I didn't. "Don't be late next time," I muttered, gathering my things. As I left, I could feel his eyes following me. The following weeks were torture in the form of comedy. Aaron was hopeless with a paintbrush. He held pencils like weapons, smudged everything he touched, and once managed to spill water over not one, but 3 student canvases in a single class. The guy was a walking disaster. And yet, he kept trying. Every day, he showed up, clumsy but determined, his laughter filling the room whenever he made a mistake. And slowly, against my better judgment, I found myself softening. I caught myself smiling when he wasn't looking, caught myself wanting to lean into his chaos. One evening, after class, I found him cleaning up the mess he'd made: paper towels, spilled paint, the works. "You don't have to stay late," I told him. "Maybe I like staying," he said, glancing up at me with those ridiculous eyes. Something unspoken passed between us, heavy and charged. My chest tightened. This was dangerous. "You're here to learn, Aaron," I said carefully. "Nothing more." He nodded, but the smirk on his lips told me he didn't believe a word of it. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, cursing myself. This was the last thing I needed. My life was steady. Finally, I had a job I loved, a rhythm that worked. And then Aaron stumbled back into my world, knocking everything sideways. But the truth was undeniable. I wanted him, and wanting him scared the hell out of me. That Friday, it rained. The studio windows blurred with water, the air cool and damp. Students shuffled in with jackets dripping. Aaron came last, shaking rain from his hair, late as usual. He grinned sheepishly at me, and I pretended not to notice the way my heart skipped. Halfway through class, I walked over to check his progress. His sketch was messy, lines crooked, proportions off, but there was something raw in it. Something vulnerable. "You're not bad," I admitted, surprising myself. He looked up, startled, then smiled in a way that wasn't cocky this time. It was soft, almost shy. "Thanks," he said. And in that moment, with the rain tapping the windows and his eyes searching mine, I knew I was in trouble. The storm I'd been holding back finally broke one night after class. Everyone had left except Aaron, who stayed behind to fix another disaster of spilled brushes and crooked canvases. I should have gone home. I should have let him fumble in peace. But instead, I found myself leaning against the doorframe, watching him. "You ever think you're cursed?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He blinked at me, then laughed. "Cursed? What? Like doomed to never draw a straight line?" I shook my head, fighting the smirk tugging at my lips. "Like, every room you walk into turns into chaos. Like you bring it with you." He paused, a paper towel dangling from his hand. His expression softened. "Maybe I do. But maybe chaos is better than silence." The weight of those words sank into me. My life had been silence for too long, controlled, measured, careful. Aaron was a wrecking ball of noise and mistakes, but he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. I crossed the room before I realized I was moving. He looked up, startled, as I reached for the charcoal stick in his hand. "You're holding it wrong again," I murmured, though the truth was, I didn't care about the charcoal. I cared about the way his hand trembled under mine, the way his breath hitched when I leaned too close. "Maybe," he whispered, his eyes flicking to my mouth. "But you don't seem like you mind." God help me, I didn't. The kiss happened before either of us could think better of it. Messy, desperate, like our first night but stripped of whiskey and impulse. This time, it was raw, honest. His hand found the back of my neck, pulling me closer. Mine curled into his shirt, clinging like I'd drown without him. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I knew the line I'd been trying to draw had blurred beyond repair. For weeks, we danced on that fragile line between teacher and student, between restraint and surrender. We'd share glances in class that no one else noticed, moments too fleeting to name but heavy with meaning. And yet, reality pressed in. I knew what people would say if they found out. That it was reckless, unprofessional, doomed. Part of me wanted to end it before it became something I couldn't control. But every time I looked at Aaron, I saw someone who refused to quit, not on art, not on me. His sketches slowly improved, clumsy strokes turning into lines that spoke of effort, of heart. And maybe that was what broke me most. That wasn't perfect. But he was trying. For himself. For us. One evening, after everyone left, he showed me a drawing. It was of me standing at the front of the studio, light spilling over my shoulders. The proportions were still off, the shading uneven, but the expression he'd captured, the intensity in my eyes, it was like he'd seen me in ways no one else had. "It's not great," he admitted, scratching the back of his neck. "But it's you. The way I see you." I stared at the sketch, at the imperfect honesty of it, and something inside me cracked wide open. "You're ridiculous," I whispered. "Yeah," he said with a grin. "But you like me anyway." The night we finally stopped pretending. The rain was pouring outside again. He'd stayed late, as always, and I'd stopped fighting the inevitability of it. When I kissed him this time, there was no hesitation, no guilt, just us. Two men stumbling through the mess of life, finding something worth holding on to. We made love in the studio, surrounded by paint and canvases, our laughter echoing between kisses. He was clumsy even then, knocking over a jar of brushes mid-embrace, but I couldn't stop laughing. Couldn't stop loving the chaos he brought into my carefully drawn life. Afterward, as we lay tangled on the floor, the storm raging outside, Aaron pressed his forehead to mine. "You know, I didn't plan on this," he whispered. "Neither did I. But I'm glad it happened." "Me too," I thought, more than I could ever say. Months later, the semester ended. Aaron wasn't my student anymore. He didn't magically become a brilliant artist. But he learned to draw lines that mattered, and maybe that was enough. On the last day, he handed me another sketch. This one was of the two of us together, side by side. The lines were shaky, the shading still off, but the joy on the page was undeniable. "Guess I finally got something right," he said, grinning. I pulled him close, my chest aching with the truth I'd been denying for so long. "You've always been right, Aaron," I murmured. "You just had to make me see it." We weren't perfect. We were messy, complicated, sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. But in the end, he was mine, and I was his. And maybe that was the point of art after all, not perfection, but expression. Not clean lines, but the raw, vulnerable strokes that told the story of who we were. Aaron was my chaos, my laughter, my storm, and somewhere between spilled paint and stolen kisses, he'd become the masterpiece I never knew I needed. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.